Welcome to the Lady Landlords podcast, where we empower women to gain financial independence through real estate investing. I'm your host, Becky Nova, founder of Lady Landlords. If you're ready to buy, manage, and grow your real estate portfolio, then let's get started.
Do you do inspections on your rentals? Well, here today, I'm going to be sharing my simple 3-step process on what I do for keeping up with inspections on our properties. So if you've been following along here, Lady Landlords podcast, I have 17 properties throughout New York, also in Westchester County, Orange County, New York, and then down in the Dominican Republic, right? The Dominican Republic is where I've been for the past 2 months. If you're watching us on YouTube or live here on Facebook, you will notice my tan is quickly fading away. I am not thrilled about that, but here we are back in New York now. So one of the very first things that I decided to do when I got back to the States was actually to do inspections. One of the reasons for that is I haven't been here in a few months, haven't set eyes on those properties, so that's something that I want to make sure that I'll be able to do. We did inspections right before we left, sometime in the fall. I actually did not go and participate in that set of inspections because I had just had my daughter. So that was something I actually sat that round out, and we ended up doing our inspections virtually, which I will come back to in a minute. But this time now was the first time I've really seen some of our properties in quite some time. So I did announce this last Friday in the Facebook group. For anybody that wanted to follow along with me live, I actually did that series on Instagram. Okay, the reason for that, it's just really easy for me to do a bunch of short, quick videos as I'm going through the day, as I'm doing those inspections. So if you do not follow me on Instagram, make sure to go over to the Becky Nova. You will find me there, and you can follow me there as I do a lot of behind-the-scenes videos on my Instagram about how I'm managing my rentals and what that looks like there. And then also here, happy to share what my process is. I did let some women know because I had a response over the weekend of women saying, but I missed the series, and now your Instagram stories are gone. So I said I would do this recap here. Make sure to go ahead and next to my name, Becky Nova, here on Facebook, if you click where it says follow, then that way you'll get alerted anytime I go live and do these trainings. So please make sure to click that if you would like to be able to follow along with some of these processes. But today I want to walk you through my 3-step process for inspections. The very first piece of this comes with providing notice to the tenants, okay? I actually lay this stuff out in my lease. It just makes my life so much easier to have it in writing. So what I actually put in my lease is I actually put the cadence for my inspections. I put quarterly inspections. I want to make sure that at a minimum that is something that the tenants understand that I will be coming through and inspecting those properties during that time. So that is something I'm probably a little bit more strict with when a new tenant moves in, somebody that I don't know, somebody that we're just trying to kind of get a feel for how the inspections, how that rental tenancy is going, then I will definitely follow up with that quarterly. But to be honest, I've had tenants that have lived with me now for years. They are fantastic tenants. We have a great group of people in our properties at this point in time. So if someone has been with me for years, and I know that they keep the property fantastic, I know that they understand the lease, that they follow all the instructions really well, I can lax up on that. That might be something that I'm only going to go maybe twice a year to go inspect. But anytime I have somebody new, I absolutely make sure to go quarterly just to make sure we get into a very good rhythm from the very beginning. Also, I have in my lease that the inspections that I give more than 24 hours notice for that. I'll usually give a few weeks notice. Why? Some tenants want to be able to be there, okay? Now, of course, for any type of an emergency, a landlord is able to go into that property without having to provide notice, okay? And that should be in your leases, so please do make sure to check for that. But in my lease, it does state, I do not need to give notice if it's an emergency, but inspections are not an emergency. So I need to give at least 24 hours notice. To me, I understand why people want to be present if someone is in their home, and I am okay with that. So I'm going to give my tenants 2 to 3 weeks notice usually that I will be doing inspections. I provide written notice, okay? That's also really important because these are formal notifications that should be going out, so I do provide written notification. I make it very clear to the tenants that they are absolutely welcome to be there during that inspection. It is their home after all, but they do not need to be, okay? when I started growing my portfolio, we focused really on the lower Westchester County, Bronx type area within New York. And right now we own about 9 units, like right on the same, like really the same intersection. They're on 2 streets. 2 of them, it's great. You can see them right across the street from each other. And then the other one is literally on the next block up. So they're incredibly close. It's fantastic to have them. I've actually had tenants move in between buildings. It's very easy to get vendors, to have service providers come out. It's very easy for maintenance because everything is nice and close. But last summer, my husband and I did move, and we are no longer living on that block. Then it was really easy to go do inspections, and then if somebody wasn't home and they wanted to be, great, we'll come back in an hour. Okay, we'll come back tomorrow. It really wasn't too much of an issue. But right now, for me to drive that hour, I am not going to want to do that and then have somebody say, oh, come back tomorrow. So I give plenty of notice on that. And I also do make it clear that even if they are not there, I will still be entering that property, okay? I can understand if now you're not having a great relationship with a tenant, if things have really been contentious, that might become problematic. But once again, that's why we want to do these inspections and keep on good terms and keep those lines of communication open with our tenants. So most of our tenants don't have an issue with this. They understand that this is how it goes, and then they are absolutely welcome to be there. But if they can't be there, the inspection will still happen at the date and time that they were informed of. I'll usually give them a window, just kind of like the cable guy. I will give them a window of when I'll be there, especially because we go kind of from unit to unit to unit to unit. But I'll usually update them when it gets a little bit closer and let them know, hey, I told you we'd be there between 10 and 2. Well, you know what? Now seeing how the day is going, hey, it looks like I'm going to be there about 1 o'clock. So in that way, that always is just a nice piece of courtesy for me. In my opinion, I've always seen rental properties as, listen, I'm the landlord. I own the building. I own the house. But while a tenant is paying rent, it really is their home. So I do try to be as respectful as I can with that, to give them that notice, to make sure that we can run these smoothly. It makes my day easier, it makes their day easier, and really continues to give that great relationship in that space. So that's how I do notice. They're very aware of it. It's all laid out in the lease. Starts there, making things nice and easy. Now, what do I do when I get there? Okay. So one of the very first and important things that I do is I always make sure that the tenants understand that the point of the inspections is not to spy on them, but is to go and look at the actual property. I want to make sure that there's no safety issues. I want to make sure everything is running properly. I want to make sure that there's no maintenance issues. If you've been a landlord for a while, you probably will notice that even though you ask the tenants to kind of tell you what's going on or inform you if there's any issues with properties, I got to be honest, sometimes I'll have tenants that just won't mention certain things, that don't want to kind of quote unquote bother us with certain issues. But sometimes those actually are things that we kind of need to know about. One of the biggest things that I always want to take a look for is water, okay? I want to make sure that there are no leaks. That is one of the first things that I do when I walk into that property. I want to make sure that I'm checking under the kitchen sink, in the bathrooms, all of those things. 2 reasons. 1, all of my properties, we actually do pay water because I own small multifamily, so that is something that is included. That is always something in my municipalities that is attached to the homeowner, and that is not a utility that I can put in the tenant's name. So if there's any leak, I don't want to have to deal with that cost. 2, water can cause a lot of damage and can be a headache. I've had problems with roofs in the past, with leaks in the past, and it can just be a nightmare. So maybe it's a little PTSD, but leaks are always the first thing that I want to look for. To be honest, years ago, there was one of my tenants. She was in a bottom floor apartment, and when we walked in, we checked under the sink, and we noticed that she had cereal in boxes underneath the sink, and you could see that they were clearly wet. And we said to her, we're like, hey, do you see that, this stuff is wet? Like, have you noticed this before? And she actually said, yeah, actually my cereal has been ruined for weeks because every time I buy a box, it always gets damp again. And it was something that, once again, in our heads as landlords, we might be like, but wait, that's because there's a leak, something is dripping. But she didn't realize that. She didn't realize what it was coming from, didn't know that was something to alert us with, and once again, didn't want to, quote unquote, bother us with what she felt was a small problem. But first thing that came to my mind is, 1, how long has this been dripping? What damage could it possibly be doing now that it's going into that bottom piece of the cabinet within the sink? 2, what is my cost for now water because of this leak? And then also 3, is this leak going anywhere else? Once again, it was a kitchen leak, so it really wasn't something that would be coming from the floors above, but still, that's going to be a concern of mine. Anytime I see a leak, especially in a basement apartment, is I'm usually going to want to know, where did that start? Did it start in an apartment above? And if so, this was a 4-family. How many floors above did this start with? So that's something that I always take really serious. Kitchens, bathrooms are some of the first things that we will go into and to be able to look. We want to check for that. We want to make sure that there's that the heat's working properly, that if we provide air conditioning, that the air conditioning unit's working properly. We want to make sure that the stove is also running appropriately and making sure that everything is working right. We want to make sure that the refrigerator is still cooling food. All those different things, it's really the appliances and mechanical pieces that we're really going down and checking with. We also want to make sure that windows are sealed properly. We want to make sure of that because in most of our small multifamilies, we do also provide heat. So when we're providing heat, I don't want a window not to be sealed and then find out that my money is literally flying out the window. If you saw my Instagram stories, I talked a lot about that last Friday as well. I will say, now that we're in the apartment and we're doing that inspection, yeah, my eyes are going to notice if there are lease violations, and that is okay. But once again, I do make it clear with the tenant that my goal is not to come down and look at how cleanly they are, because that doesn't really matter. Yes, there has to be some type of code violation within our city that they do have to meet, right? There are certain things that you just cannot be above and beyond with trash and other things of that nature that could be causing an issue, that could be violating part of the building code or city code. But I don't care if you didn't do your dishes that day. I didn't care if you haven't done laundry that day. Those are not the things that I am looking for. But if I do happen to see a lease violation, those are things that I'm going to take note of. If there's an unauthorized person, an unauthorized pet, all of those different pieces are something that I am going to notice. Also, just to relate back to cleanliness, sometimes we've actually had tenants that have been dirty to a point where then they do attract rodents, mice, bugs, whatever it may be, and then I'll get a call asking for an exterminator. And really I have to kind of push back and say, well, hey, these are because of these food items, and therefore it's not landlord responsibility, but that's actually a tenant issue, and that cost of the exterminator is going to be passed along to them. So it helps to really get a state of what is going on in that property and in that unit, and I encourage you to still be able to look around. One of the things that I actually do for our inspections is usually this is something that my husband and I do together. One of the reasons for that is because we can kind of divide and conquer. We can walk into a unit, my husband automatically beelines it for the kitchen, for the bathroom, wherever he wants to check for leaks, wherever he's going to start checking the mechanicals and making sure that everything is running right. I get to talk with the tenant. I like to ask just open-ended, simple questions just to get a sense of what's been going on in the apartment and if there's anything else that a tenant wants us to be able to take a look at. On Friday, as I shared in my Instagram stories, there were a couple things with one of the tenants that I spoke to that I thought was really interesting to be able to hear. When I asked one of our tenants if there was anything else that she wanted us to take a look at, anything that she felt like was not functioning properly in the apartment, she came back with 2 different items. One of them was a simple cabinet was off the hinge. Well, I was happy she actually mentioned this to me. A couple reasons. One, simple, easy fix. It was something that I got to win as a landlord to be able to make her life a little bit easier with simply a screwdriver. Took 30 seconds to be able to fix that. That made me really happy. It made her happy. And now she's all thrilled with me as a landlord. I'm going to take that all day long. But it also showed me that she really cares about the apartment. I thought that was really great that she was making this her home and wanted to make sure that things were really taken care of properly. And that was really nice. So I'm really happy she was able to bring that up. The second thing that she mentioned to me is, unfortunately, a few months ago, while we were down in the Dominican Republic, one of the kids had an accident, and there ended up with a small hole in one of the walls. It happened. So since we were away, we sent our boots on the ground, one of our handymen, over to be able to fix that hole in the wall. Not a problem. happens all the time. She was happy to take care of the cost. We had our guy go over, but she actually said, hey, can you take a look at it? Because I don't think it's completed. So we went over, and you can see that part of it was actually patched, but it looked like the handyman was waiting for it to dry before finishing patching that wall. So she was right. It wasn't done completely. Totally fine. It was a simple fix to be able just to call the handyman to come back to make sure to do that, but I'm really glad she brought that up with me. I'm really glad she brought that up with me because I am making sure that my service people are really doing their job. Once again, it was from one of her kids, and then therefore that was something that she paid for, but I'm still now passing on that cost and now paying that handyman. I want to make sure that things that I am paying for are done appropriately. Our handyman is fantastic. We've used him for years. I did not have any issue with the fact that he was over there, did a whole bunch of things. He forgot about coming back and doing the second coat on it. Not a problem. Simple, easy fix. But if that was somebody that was a new handyman to me, or if this was a repeated issue with the same handyman, I might need to say, you know what, this might not be the person that I want to hire anymore. And it's really important for me to be able to get that feedback, and that was really great feedback to be able to get from that tenant in that space. And I'm really glad that she felt comfortable to be able to share with me. I really love asking those questions and just sitting there and listening. You'll never know what a tenant will actually tell you, and I think it's incredibly important to hear what they have to say. That I've noticed over the years actually increases the amount of time that a tenant stays in our property, and that means less turnover, which means greater profit over time because I don't have to have those vacancies and I don't have to spend money now just redoing and refreshing those apartments to get them rented also frequently. The third step of this is to actually follow up on the items. Once again, the first thing we did, we weren't even out of that building before my husband was already messaging our handyman saying, hey, by the way, got to come back to apartment 2. We need to make sure to finish taking care of that hole. It's incredibly important to show the tenants that when they raise an issue or share that there is a problem, or when we identify a problem, we follow through on those things. That's also something that's going to decrease tenant turnover. So following through on the items, make sure that you come up with an action plan and set realistic deadlines to be able to get things done. We don't have to do everything that day, and also we don't have to do everything that a tenant requests, but anything that's a maintenance issue, security issue, are really things that we want to make sure that we are taking care of and taking care of fast. The second side of that is you also want to follow up if you did notice any lease violations. I can't tell you how often in the Lady Landlords Facebook group I see posts of women saying, oh, I've had this tenant, they haven't paid me now for 3 months, what do I do? We should have been doing something 2 months and 25 days later, right? These are things that we want to make sure that we nip them in the bud and fast, especially if they're new tenants. So if there is a lease violation, we want to make sure to be sending out cure or quit notices to the tenants, alerting them of those violations and making sure that we can get things back on track. That's better for us, that's better for the tenant, and it's incredibly important to make sure that we are enforcing the lease at all times and equally as we go through. So that's how I do my inspections. Let me know down in the comments if you do inspections. I would love to see if those are things that you are doing, and if you are considering buying another rental and need help with learning how to finance your deal, do know that we have our Creative Financing Decoded class coming up next week, Tuesday, April 28th. There is still time to be able to join that class, so write the word creative down in the comments, and I will send you over the link to get you registered for that class. The replay is only going out to those that are registered, so do make sure to sign up for that. And thank you for joining me for my 3 simple steps in how I take care of our rental inspections. See you all back in the Lady Landlords Facebook group.
Thank you for listening to the Lady Landlords podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate investing journey, visit lady-landlords.com to book a 15-minute orientation call with me and see if you're ready to join our mentorship program. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter and join our Facebook group for exclusive real estate investing tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a Lady Landlord today.